If you've ever driven north on Yellowhead Highway, not far past Valemount, British Columbia, and just past the official northeastern corner of the Columbia River Basin, on your right you'll see a mountain that stands above all others. Reaching a lofty height of 3,954 meters, Mount Robson is the highest peak in the North American Rockies. It's also the second highest peak entirely in British Columbia. Of note, the trickle of water that descends from Robson's summit flows west and then north, forming the headwaters of the mighty Fraser River, British Columbia's other major water system. But that's an entirely different story, or podcast, I should say. Back to the peak in question. If you've ever seen Mount Robson in its rocky flesh, there's a palpable effect. It's a shocking vista. This is an epic peak, both stunning and foreboding, dwarfing the surrounding landscape. Not surprisingly, its steep granite faces and high clinging snowfields have been a siren song to adventurers for over a century. Two of those adventurers are women from the basin, one becoming the first woman to climb Mount Robson's summit in the summer of 1924, the other the first woman to ski from its summit in 2025. Two remarkable feats. The ascender was Phyllis Munday, a legend in Canadian climbing and mountaineering. Of English parents, her family immigrated to the shores of Kootenay Lake in 1901, when she was just 6 years old. In 1907, when Phyllis was 14, the family would move to Vancouver. By then, however, Phyllis was hooked. She would pursue the summits of British Columbia for the rest of her life. If you haven't heard of Phyllis Munday, I highly suggest you look her up. She lived an epic life. Fast forward 101 years to our descender and another woman living an extraordinarily epic life. Christina Lustenberger, or as her friends like to call her, Lusty, was born and raised in Invermere. And over the past decade, Lusty has become one of the most prominent ski mountaineers in the world, man or woman. Her first descent off the south face of Mount Robson in February 2025, a line that had never been skied before, was, well, nothing short of epic. You can see a theme emerging here, can't you? In a region filled and bordered by epic landscapes, makes sense that its residents aren't afraid to take on epic challenges. You could say there's something in the headwaters. Welcome to our episode on the epics. I'm Mitchell Scott, Editor-in-Chief at Kootenay Mountain Culture Productions, and this is The Headwaters, brought to you by Columbia Basin Trust. These days, it seems everything is being labeled epic. A lunchtime yoga session, killer PowerPoint presentation, even a breakfast sandwich. We've kind of lost the meaning of what an actual epic is. So let's dive in. Go deep. The root of the word epic refers to a long poem that focuses on heroic deeds. One of the first of which was the Iliad, a very long story by Greek poet Homer written around the 7th century BCE. In it, our protagonist Achilles encounters war, rage, death, good fortune, bad fortune, and the wrath of the gods. No big deal. The full epic gamut. It was followed by Homer's other epic called the Odyssey. No breakfast sandwiches in these tales, although they might make for good PowerPoint presentations. Fast forward to today, and despite the ubiquitous use of the word epic, we still have our champions out there doing epic things, especially here in the Columbia Basin. Among many qualified candidates, we found 4 people who have accomplished some of the most physically and mentally demanding feats you've ever heard of. And our podcast communications guy and now reporter, all-out epic dude himself, Vince Hempsall, has the story. Vince, where do we begin?
Hey, Mitch. Let's start in the heart of the Columbia Mountains with a man who's skied more of them than most of us will ever set eyes on. Douglas Noblet has completed not one, not two, but 3 grand traverses, which are natural ski tours 100 kilometers or longer. And he's done them across the Selkirks, Purcells, and Monachees, some of the wildest mountain ranges in British Columbia.
That's not backcountry skiing, that's backcountry epicing. Can it be used as a verb?
It can for Douglas. Noblet and his various partners have spent over a month at a time navigating glaciers, summiting peaks, and sleeping in the snow. His Monachie traverse alone clocked 600 kilometers and 42,000 vertical meters. That's the equivalent to climbing Everest a dozen times. I went for a ski tour with him this past spring, and we talked about all his adventures. One of the craziest experiences was when he broke a ski.
When I broke my ski on the Selkirks, we were maybe half a day north of Rogers Pass and made some in-reach messages. My dad was able to bring some skis into Revelstoke. Me and Steve dropped our gear, most of our gear, backtracked, hitchhiked into Revy, grabbed some skis, borrowed a car, organized to leave it at the pass, and then caught up to the rest of the group by 3 in the morning.
Wow. Wait, how did you get out? You must have borrowed someone else's skis. Then.
No, I skied on one ski.
You skied on your one ski?
Yeah.
For a half a day?
Yeah.
Something to note about his traverses is they all happened in the late spring because the team needed longer daylight. But that time of year also has hazards like avalanches and open water crossings. In fact, on our short tour together, we had to cross a raging creek on a narrow snow bridge. It was terrifying.
I had a near miss in the Purcells, maybe a week into the trip, so just north of Grey Creek Pass, a couple days north of Grey Creek Pass area, and triggered a size 2.5 avalanche.
Wow.
Yeah, kind of felt the signs. Long walk up, had snowed 10 or 15 overnight with a bit of wind, and you kind of felt the snow changer at the top. We discussed as a group, there's a couple couloirs we could take, kind of short chutes, or there's a rib feature. And as a group, we debated someone to take the couloirs, someone to take the rib, and we settled on the most conservative option of taking the rib, this little large rib. And I dropped in first, and I did 2 turns, and then the whole thing fractured around me on both couloirs, maybe 50 meters on either side. But luckily, I was right on this little rib feature, and the snow just peeled in every direction away from me, and I stayed there.
Sounds like Douglas and his crew have skied every inch of the Kootenay map.
It's true, and he knows those mountains like few others. He told me what he loves most is coming to understand a range as a whole. Not just climbing a peak, but seeing how the valleys connect and where the creeks flow. It's not just about summits, it's about scale.
Okay, so what's next for Douglas? I imagine it's a big one.
He's eyeing the Caribous now. It's the last of the 4 Columbia subranges he hasn't done. He says it's shorter than the others, but still, we're talking 3 weeks at least on skis.
My quads and calves are quivering just hearing about it. Okay, nice one. Vince, who's next?
Okay, for this next one, we go from skis to the sky. Meet Benjamin Jordan, a man who paraglided from Mexico all the way back to his home at the time in the basin at Slocan City.
Okay, wait, paraglided. So that's like up in the air. That's flying.
Correct. It took him 150 days, and he covered 2,800 kilometers, spending over 2,000 of those in the sky and about 700 of them walking between launch sites.
It's insane.
Totally. But he persevered. He subsisted mostly on peanut butter and living his dream, which was inspired by, you're going to love this, monarch butterflies.
I ended up down in Valle de Bravo, Mexico. And when I was down there, I had this circumstance where I'd landed and I was completely swarmed by monarch butterflies. And I thought, wait a second, like monarch butterflies, are these the same ones that I grew up with in Ontario? I'm very far away from home. And I quickly learned from others that these are the same butterflies. They actually flew all the way from where I grew up in Canada down to Mexico.
Okay, that's got to be one of the wildest origin stories I've ever heard.
Totally, and it gets better. Benjamin was a fashion photographer in Toronto who gave it all up to chase his fear. He literally picked up paragliding because it scared him. This is him talking about his first ever flight.
It was like I fell in love. I just fell in love, like the deepest love I've ever felt. And in that moment, I just came up, well, shortly after that, I came up with this idea that, wait a second, maybe fear and love are the same exact thing. It's just that fear is love with elements unknown, and then love is fear, but with elements known. And so I've kind of just led my whole life by that motto. But that's where it all started. I got into it because I was afraid of it. I wanted to know what would happen to my brain and my soul if I just made myself do something that I was particularly afraid of. And I've been in love ever since.
Okay, that's both deep and epic.
Agreed. His flight from Mexico to Canada is the longest unassisted paraglide ever attempted in North America. He had to rely solely on thermals, which are columns of rising warm air, and land wherever he could.
And did he make it?
He did. He's now in the Guinness Book of World Records for what he calls his pilgrimage. He followed the monarchs north and found himself along the way.
Wow, and a little peanut butter for fuel, which gets us going on our next epic. You're taking us from sky to soil, yes?
Yes. Our next epic athletes are a married couple who live in Golden. Dan Durston and his wife Tara, who goes by T, are big fans of Thru hikes, which are long-distance treks done in one season. They've completed many of the famous ones, including the 4,000-kilometer-long Pacific Crest Trail, which spans from Canada to Mexico. But in 2017, they became the first people to hike the Great Divide Trail both ways in one go. The trail is considered one of the most spectacular and challenging long-distance trails on the planet. It skirts the Columbia Basin from Waterton Lakes National Park near the Canada-US border, through the Rocky Mountains to Kakwa Provincial Park north of Jasper. Doing it both ways is called a yo-yo hike, and it involved 2,300 kilometers of nonstop walking through difficult mountainous terrain over 4 months. In fact, when they first started in June, they had to wear snowshoes.
That is a haul of epic proportions. Sorry, that's my last epic.
Okay. After that, they went on to start the Durston Gear company, which makes some of the world's most popular ultralight tents. Dan says his greatest ideas were born on the trail.
On the PCT in particular, I'm just hiking along hour after hour with basically nothing, just in my own head. In regular life, you don't get a chance to just be in your own head like all day, day after day. Some people kind of don't thrive in that environment. And for me, I'm just kind of works. So I'm just sort of, okay, well, we're hiking across the desert for the next 80 miles and there's kind of nothing to see. So I'm just going to think. And that's kind of how I got into gear design.
A lot of us get trail epiphanies. Not all of us, though, start a globally recognized gear company afterward. What these two have done it's quite a successful company, is it not?
Totally. It's for sure one of the most successful outdoor companies in Canada, certainly in Western Canada. When it comes to hiking, though, it was never about accolades for Dan. The same goes for his wife, T, who's done even more through hikes than her husband. But she says the yo-yo hike was by far the most impactful.
And then the Great Divide Trail yo-yo just showed me an even deeper level of grit that I had access to, that I was even tougher than just walking for 5 months on the PCT. This was not quite that long, but it was just way more emotionally challenging. At the beginning being in snowshoes, and sometimes we would hike for, let's say, the entire day, so 12 hours, and we'd only make it 12 or 13 kilometers. And it was just so frustrating. So you just feel so discouraged in the beginning and feeling like I can't believe I'm going to do this. But it opened up a whole new sense of what's possible for me if I really put my mind to it. And I just got really passionate about pushing myself. And I don't consider myself that athletic of an individual and not even particularly competitive, but I realized I do like to compete with myself and I do like to challenge myself. So it was neat to do that.
T says that through hiking helps strip life down to the essentials: a tent, a pack, a trail, and then ignoring the naysayers and your own doubts to do something that no one else has done.
That's the thread through all of these stories, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. These are people who listened to a calling and just went for it. Whether it was on skis, in the sky, or on foot, they all followed their own epic adventures through the wilderness.
When we think of epic tales from the Kootenays, we usually picture impossible mountains, endless trails, and athletes pushing themselves to their limits. Everything we've talked about so far in this episode. But art, in its own way, is also epic. Because it doesn't just tell the story, it is the story. Our fearless reporter, Vince Hempsall, takes us into the world of sketch comedy, small-town fame, and one of the most ambitious TV projects ever created here in the Kootenays.
Your dog is perfectly healthy. He's just really homophobic.
I'm sorry, what?
It's hard to describe the TV show Southern Interior. It's part sitcom, part sketch comedy, and entirely rooted in Nelson, British Columbia. The show captures the weird, wonderful energy of this mountain town, but what's more epic than the final product is the art behind it. The time, the people, and the patience required to bring it to life. Amy Bohigan is the show's producer.
And I think that's what you have to do with a creative project when you get started. You literally have to just lose sleep over it, and then it kind of forces you to do it. So the idea of it just started with the interactions I had around town, and then I just kept writing them down on my phone, and eventually that became a pitch deck, and that became development money through Creative BC, and then it became a team of writers in a writing room, and then the writing room folded into a full-length script. And then eventually we could apply for funding for production, which is a long shot in Canada, especially these days, and we got it. And I thought, well, this project's going a lot further than I thought, and great. I'm happy to see that it keeps evolving and it keeps bringing more people on board, and it was like a train out of control. So eventually we're in production last July, and there's, dozens of people on our crew and our cast, and there's probably 100+ people that came on board to help us with locations as extras. The whole town kind of rallied for it.
One of those writers and actors on the show was Michelle Hart. She had just moved to the region from Toronto and came from an improv background. So, Michelle had to navigate not only the learning curve of writing sketch comedy for TV, but also understanding what made Nelson tick.
Sketch is so hard because you have to definitively be like, this is my opinion and I think this is funny. And then you have to be like, here you go, like to other people. And I think it's great that you have to stand on a business that you're like, yep. and I think that's great because a lot of people, like, you put an art in a museum and they're like, but they'll quietly walk by it. If there's like a comedy thing they don't like, they're like, that's bad. And you're like, okay, sick. Like, love that for me. Good. And I kind of love that journey that it's so on display because comedy is trying to evoke any emotion out of you. A lot of people think it's laughter, but I think it's very funny for someone to watch a sketch that you wrote that you think is really funny and they don't move a muscle. Like that, to me, the tension in the room is also another form of humor. I think sketch comedy is improv's so about connection, and sketch comedy for me is so about evoking something, and whether it's good or bad, as long as it evokes something, it worked.
That's interesting. I like what you said there about tension, because obviously an epic adventure has like a ridiculous amount of tension baked into it. I didn't fully appreciate it, but like sketch comedy definitely has tension baked into it.
The only reason you laugh is the release of tension. Like it's like that built up and then you're like, oh, okay, I can laugh now. Or a surprise laughter. And I think that's my favorite thing, is to try to be like, how do you write that?
The show's lead actor, and also one of its writers, is Lucas Myers, a longtime local performer known for his one-man plays and satirical characters. He says he's used to embodying multiple characters in his shows, but Southern Interior was next level.
That was pretty intense.
How come?
Because I played 40? I don't know. Like,
you had so many characters.
I had so many characters.
Yeah.
So every day, I was like 6 different people or something.
Wow.
And different costumes and different this. And just being a part of that incredible machine, right? Of shooting something. I wish I had numbers here, but like however many skits it is, we did that in 10 days.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
It was so well organized.
You're shooting on location.
Oh, yeah.
So not only are you multiple characters, but you're having, in 10 days, you're bouncing.
Oh, yeah. We went like 3 or 4 different places in a day.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. So I would say just that. And it was because it was so finite. It was like 10 days, right? Beginning and end. So there was something about that felt, very, and we were all in it together. We were all on that boat with, Odysseus rowing away.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out how to get home.
Lucas's reference to the original epic poem, The Odyssey, is important because sometimes we forget the main character had an entire crew at the start of the adventure, and they had no idea what they were getting into, just like the team that worked on Southern Interior. For Michelle, Lucas, and Amy, the show wasn't just a project, it was a challenge, a creative adventure, one that took 5 years to develop and months to shoot, edit, and promote. And, like any epic, it pushed each of them. Here's Amy again. How would you compare Southern Interior to The Odyssey?
That's a dissertation question.
And you have 30 seconds. Go.
Okay, I'm going for my PhD. Here we go. There's a hero's journey, and one guy goes on it, and he faces all the obstacles and, overcomes them. And I feel like, yes, you could say I had the idea, but it became quickly about a lot of people, and so the journey was really more of a, instead of kind of going through a 3-act structure, it was basically like a spiral or something, like it was more of a journey where, for me, it was the true epic in the sense of it was an adventure because I met people from all walks of life. Either they became inspiration for the show as characters in Nelson, or they were writers that I met along the way in different programs I participated in to prepare myself for this, because I didn't know how to write comedy. I didn't know how to make a TV show before this, so I had to find people to teach me how to do that. So I might be the person who connected all the folks, but it became its own, it had its own life. And then you've got the community of Nelson, which is always ready for the ride. And so everybody just jumped on board. So every business owner and any person we talked to at the city of Nelson and every single organization we shot at was a yes. I don't think one person said no to us because they saw it was local. They wanted to support it. They knew that, we have something special here to show the world. So everyone was into it. So I felt like a steward, really. I felt like a steward rather than like Odysseus in a boat,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. PhD. Here you go.
Thank you. That's the easiest PhD ever. I'll take it.
And would all 3 of them do it again? Hell yeah.
If we do it next time, we would do it completely differently. Which is incredible because I think we've all learned so much. But it was crazy because we couldn't. I remember like Jackie and I like being like, this is what we think the show is. And Amy's like, yes, I've been trying to tell you that for months. And we just like need to say it in our own words differently. Like it was so alive that all of us were like, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. So it was just so chaotic until the very end. And even at the end, we were like, hope this works.
I think that line, hope this works, really sums up an epic. It's about putting ourselves out there, not knowing if we'll succeed or fail. Whether we're facing one-eyed monsters like in the Odyssey, journeying across distances never attempted before, or creating art that imitates life, an epic isn't defined by the journey, but by what the journey changes in us. For Amy, Lucas, and Michelle, Southern Interior wasn't just creating a television show, it was about finding themselves and their community in the process.
And now it's time for...
It's a tiny town.
Welcome to Tiny Town, where we stop by those places we usually pass by. If you ever find yourself driving between Salmo and Nelson on Highway 6, consider pulling into the unincorporated community of Weimer. Tucked away beside the meandering Salmo River, at an elevation of 750 meters, Weimer, like the Norse mythological character it's named after, just feels, epic. Like it still has one foot in the time before. I've got an old buddy named Ronnie Hawes who's lived in Weimer for about 20 years or so with his wife, Velvet. He's an avid mountain biker and road cyclist who's been on many an epic adventure. So I'd figured I'd pull on in for a visit.
I used to ride mountain bikes back in Vancouver in the 90s.
Way back. Exactly.
And you were a bit of a legend.
In the theater of my mind. Yes, that's the important part.
But now we're here in Weimer, population...
420.
420.
Yeah.
Outside your really cool house and studio.
Oh, well, thank you.
Right
downtown,
on the main drag.
Yeah, downtown Weimer. Yeah. And the building next to ours is a studio, so Velvet helped set this up for a whole bunch of young women to apply their craft, and there's pottery and people that work in the film industry, and look at these carvings and
beautiful,
and jewelry smith, or whatever you call those jewelry people.
Yeah, jeweler.
Jeweler.
In late spring every year, Weimer is home to a quaint and cool music festival called Tiny Lights, which has 6 venues scattered throughout the town. One of those places is where Ronnie builds his skating rink, a place where the kids in this community love to congregate in the winter.
Seems like it attracts interesting, adventurous.
Yeah, that's a good
too.
point. It's almost, if you want to get hippie, we have Quartz Creek, a really good mountain bike trail there, and people believe the quartz bring people that, why is there so many creative, physical, that, that...
It's like a
it's
vortex,
interesting.
Instead of a vortex, maybe. Vortex?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and in a good way. You're not getting sucked into it, but in a good way we are getting, Yeah. So...
Cool.
Freedom, that you can do your own thing. And
the little mountain town is also home to the Weimer Hotel, which has a pub with stories galore. It was once known as a popular biker bar. You could actually see tire burnouts on the floor of the bar itself.
Yes, I'm like standing here and I'm like, what's going on? There's smoke coming out of the building. It's a fire. And so I run over there and I go in, and most of the people have walked out. There's a motorbike in the bar, laying vulcanized rubber, just burning. You can't even see in there. And I go in there and I'm like, what the? And there's a big biker still, it's thick. You can see like 2 feet at all. And he's eating his burger like nothing's happening. Yeah.
And that's our podcast on the epics. To find out more about the people and places in this episode, make sure to visit headwaterspodcast.com. The Headwaters is brought to you by Columbia Basin Trust. To find out more about all the good things the Trust does when it comes to supporting people and communities in the basin, check out ourtrust.org. The Headwaters is produced by the good folks at Kootenay Mountain Culture Productions. A big thanks to our reporter for this episode, Vince Hempsall, who's also our digital content manager. Tara Cunningham is our story editor and producer. Graham Tracy, our sound engineer. Stacy Machowski makes all of our custom art. And Jesse Lee, our music. I'm Mitchell Scott. Thanks for listening.